And so now I write books and deliver training to help people just communicate more easily at work.
Välkommen till Edtech Tuesdays. En intervjupodd om innovation, lärandekultur och teknologier för lärande. Vi samtalar med svenska och internationella innovatörer, investerare, thinkers och doers som utmanar status quo. Podden produceras av Snabbfoting, en ledare inom kontinuerligt lärande och digitala plattformar.
I do training around the world, but I do quite a lot at the moment in Africa. And when teaching the 39 ways, my default is it's sort of a very internet connected world. Video reminders, email tips, online communities. Those are things that I will use in my training because they suit my topic and my audience.
Mm-hmm.
But for people delivering training in sub-Saharan Africa, in villages where there's no electricity, maybe not even running water, those methods I use don't work. Mm-hmm. And so I have to adapt my training to fit. And the great thing about it is I don't teach specific methods. I teach how to find the methods that are best suited for your situation.
And that's good. I like that. A strict method, it works for a few, but not
for everyone.
It is not one size fits all. It's very important to understand the customer, the employees, what do they need to learn, when do they need to learn, where are they when they do
are they, what access do they have?
Yes.
And I work with an auditing company who trains other auditors. And then those people go out and do the work. And they have a range of trainees and audience types they work with. Some are in the cities working for corporations, in which case they can use almost any of the tips in the book.
Mm.
But when they go out to the rural areas, they can't use online video reminders as part of their training because people don't have access to the internet, to the data. They don't have mobile phones. So a WhatsApp group isn't helpful because in those rural areas, people don't have that access.
Mm.
So they have to take their own training and create two very different methods to help support students and participants after the training because of the geography, because of the circumstances those people are in. And that's the whole point of this book. That's the whole point of making training stick. It's to get us to think, what is the best way to support those students where they are today and what they have access to so that they can make the best use of the training they've been given?
Absolutely. And I think, for the guests, for the audience today, we have Chris Fenning here in Edtech Tuesdays. Yes. We haven't decided yet if it's with you or not, but it's rolling.
It is. That's fun. I like this. What we've been talking about can be the intro. It could be part of the middle.
Yes, I can
totally
get it. Absolutely. And Chris, I also really curious and interested what happens after the training, because many customers that I meet, they are so focused on a 2 or 3 day training or a few packages with micro courses. It could be an IT security training or something like that. But what happens after the training? I think it's really important to also support with pre-training, the training, and something that happens after to reinforce it, strengthen the knowledge and make it to learning.
Yes, we have to. It's not just a nice thing to do, it's a necessary thing to do. So there's a while ago, I think it was in the 1960s, a person called Mr. Ebbinghaus did some studies about how quickly we forget what we're taught. And there's something called the Ebbinghaus curve, or more commonly, the forgetting curve. And if you think of a childlike graph with two axes, the top axis on one side is how much you've remembered, and the axis along the bottom is time. It's almost a vertical drop. We come out of training and all immediately we forget 50% within an hour.
Mm.
Within a day, we've forgotten 60 to 70%, and by the end of the week, it's 90%. And that's on average, which means sometimes we've forgotten everything,
Yes.
and other times we've
Then
only
it's only a
80.
nice to have,
Yeah,
but not
and
more.
that's it's so I mean it's crazy. And this experiment has been repeated time and time again. And I think all of us know from our own experience we can be in the best training session ever. It could be engaging, full of activities. We're fully concentrating. We feel energized. We're up and moving around the room, all of those great techniques in the workshop, and we leave inspired and informed and ready to change the world. And we go back to our desks and immediately do the same thing we've always done. And we forget what we've learned. And that's human nature.
Yeah.
Because training is what it actually is trying to get people to change a habit. And
And
that's
you
true whether
don't.
you're learning Excel or communication, which is what I mainly teach, or you're helping people deliver better training. We're trying to change the habits in the people that we train. And that cannot happen in a one-time training event, no matter how good it is. We have to find ways to overcome that forgetting curve, and that takes repetition over time.
Maybe remember one important thing from the training, but then you also need to make that in practice to make the change of a behavior. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, even the one
Because
thing.
otherwise, maybe you tell something. It was a really good training. I learned this good tip. I take it with me. But if you don't, walk the talk, if you only remember it, then it's not useful, and you don't have an outcome, no economic benefit. So yeah, very important with what's happened. Yeah,
Yes.
afterwards as well.
And for anyone listening to this who pays for training, whether they pay for their own training or they're paying for training in their company or organization, if everyone in the training forgets 90% of the training, you're paying 100% of the price to get 10% of the value. That's terrible. That's
It
not a
is.
good investment. And particularly if it's sort of every year we put people through the same training and they forget 90% of it every year, or maybe then the second year they'll only forget 85%. So it's a little better. But for anyone paying for training, I beg you, look for training that supports you after the initial training ends, because you are far more likely to remember, to use, to change your habits and get more value from that training. If you're only getting 10% of what you pay for, what a waste.
How many are aware of? I think many have heard about the Ebbinghaus curve, but are they really aware of this? What do you say, Chris?
I I would like to have faith that everyone working in training and development is aware of this, but I have to use my own experience. I didn't know about it. I'd once I saw it again, I remembered I might have seen it before, but even having delivered training for a few years, I didn't know about the Ebbinghaus curve. It was only when I started writing the book that I was reminded of it and then got deeper into it and realized just how important this forgetting curve is. So no, I don't think people in the training environment are familiar with it.
I think if they start to create trainings that are different, that increase the value, it is also easier to escalate money from other stakeholders in the organization. Because I think both HR and learning and development, it is like, okay, it is a must-have to do some sort of trainings like compliance and IT security. But and also stimulate some talents to stay in the organization, attract and have the
Yes.
retention so they stay.
Yep.
But they need more. So
Yeah.
it
They have
is
to
like
justify the money.
yeah, and it is like the trust is quite low, so they don't receive so much money to make good trainings that have really good output.
Yes, yes, and every time you go back and ask for more money, people point at the failed training from last year.
Mm,
We had this big initiative, all employees went through it and nothing changed.
mm,
And and that happens because one and done training
mm,
doesn't work. And it's in companies, particularly at the moment, there's a lot of uncertainty at the time of this recording where
mm,
AI is looking, people are worried about jobs being replaced. The economy is in many countries is either flat or uncertain. And in these times, companies cut two budgets first,
mm.
marketing and training.
Yes.
And they are the easy and travel. They cut
Yeah.
travel, marketing, training, and travel. They cut those and training goes because it's seen as a less valuable spend.
Mm,
But every company has areas that are problems. Every company has areas where staff need development. And you gave a fantastic example of being able to retain good talent
mm,
requires helping them develop.
mm,
And if companies cut training, they're essentially saying, we're happy being inefficient. We are happy not
mm,
making progress, making efficiency savings, getting better. We are happy with the status quo or falling behind.
mm.
And it's a shame. I do understand it because training is hard to justify the return on investment, particularly when people forget 90% of it.
Yeah. Yeah, very interesting question. But I think when it is uncertain times, when you need to be better than your competitors, then you need to invest. If you don't invest, if you don't drive innovation, then you will be behind all other in the marketplace. Maybe you also lose your talents. So it is a never-ending process and a bad spiral.
It is. It is.
Mm.
And for us working in the training space, anyone listening to this who delivers training, whether internally or as an independent outsider or as part of an agency, if you, if we as trainers, training providers, if we don't start providing support after the training has ended, our competitors will, and we will lose out.
Mm.
One example of this is there are big platforms like Udemy for Business and LinkedIn Learning where
Mm.
large companies can pay a monthly subscription and get, to some extent, unlimited training hours on whatever's available on that platform.
Yeah.
Those training courses are pre-recorded and delivered, but they also have drip-fed test sequences, reminder emails, prompts that come up, invitations to join a community of people who've gone through the training.
Mm.
All of those things are not only free for the training person using those platforms, but they're incredibly low cost for that company that is paying for the training.
Mm.
And as someone who buys training, am I going to choose the platform that enables me to have as many courses as I want and all these extra benefits?
Mm.
Or am I going to choose the company that only does in person, but when they're gone, they're gone?
Mm.
And they leave the room and my people are left on their own. It's
Yeah.
really hard to see that value when these other platforms are providing all this extra stuff. And even our direct competitors, I have people who I don't really think of competitors. I have like potential collaborators and contemporaries.
Yeah. That is a good perspective. Mm.
Oh, it's lovely because it means we can all work together.
Yeah.
But when it comes to delivering training, if I just do live in person and then disappear, but someone else is making use of platforms like Teachable, Thinkific, Kajabi, and they're using all of that automated engagement techniques, methods, and tools, they're going to provide a lot richer experience. They're going to provide a lot
Mm.
more value, and their training is going to stick. And it
Mm.
costs them nothing.
Mm.
Once they've built it, the system automatically sends out video reminders once a week, automatically
Mm.
sends a, hey, how are you doing, check-in email with a
Yeah.
link to an assessment and some feedback. It's automated.
Mm.
My competitors would absolutely, or collaborators, I keep saying they would
Yeah.
just overtake me because I
Yeah.
would be being left behind. So we have to start looking at what happens after trainees leave the room.
Yeah. Absolutely. But what most can you see is missing? Now we speak about the after training, but is this something more? What's missing in how they can, yeah, do even better? Is there some
Oh,
sort of special techniques or yeah, what comes to your mind?
I, I think I think there isn't one answer. In fact, I'm confident there isn't one answer to that because every situation is different.
Yeah.
As we talked about earlier, and it may or may not have made it into the recording, so I will repeat it now just in case. The making our training stick involves supporting trainees, students, participants after the main training is done. And there is no one way to do that. My book, 39 Ways to Make Training Stick, has 39 of them. Don't do them all, and they wouldn't all work in every situation. I mentioned an example previously where in Africa, someone was teaching in a big city, and then they were teaching out in the countryside.
Mm.
Well, in the big city, when they're working with banks, those trainees have access to the internet, to personal computers, mobile phones, data wherever they go. So digital methods like video reminders, email tips, online communities, WhatsApp groups, all those are methods that can be used to help support the training.
Mm.
But go out into the countryside where there isn't the internet, none of those methods would work.
Mm.
None of them. So they have to go to a paper and pencil
Mm.
or regular community meetings, getting back in person, live events. Those would be far more successful. In fact, they may be the only options in
Mm.
that area. Same topic, same age group of people being trained, but their circumstances and situation are different.
Mm.
So as trainers, we have to consider that and pick
Yeah.
a method that's going to be right for the training, for the audience, for their location, for what's in their
Mm.
environment.
Mm. Thank you, Chris. And what do you say? How can leaders help and support and maybe accelerate learning for employees?
Oh, what can the leaders do? So much. So,
Yeah,
so much. And,
lots of it.
there is a lot. And the things I'm about to say come from a position that I was a leader in multiple companies at a fairly senior level. I was a senior director, had sort of up to about 100 people within teams in my organization in various forms. And so I've been on both sides of
Mm.
receiving the training and paying for training for the teams.
Mm.
And there is one thing that leaders can and really I think must do, and that is support the training efforts before, during, and after.
Mm.
If a leader
Yes.
thinks signing for the money and then they're done, that is almost guaranteed to waste that money.
Mm.
And a
True.
team needs to have the support of their leader to effect change.
Mm.
As an example, if we were training something simple like an Excel course or
Mm-hmm.
go Microsoft Excel,
Yep.
teaching the team to do it gives them tactical how-to stuff. But if they go back to their desk and their boss then immediately says, I need the report for Friday, just get it done, and they put pressure on them for time, that person's probably going to go back to their default of what they did before.
Mm.
And if they're meant to be doing something new, the management needs to support that and provide accountability and check-ins. It doesn't have to be much. It doesn't have to be,
Mm.
I'm going to sit with them and ensure they do it. It can be every few weeks. Remind them of something from the training or ask how they're doing or what has been helpful
Mm.
and what has
Mm.
been harder to use. Have a conversation.
Mm.
Remind people of the new methods that they learned. Hey, did you use that thing that we learned about in the training on Friday, or are you doing it in a different way?
Mm.
Never with an intent to judge, but to remind, to reinforce and support the learning that was done. And
Mm.
if the manager themselves can't do it, they need to assign and support someone who is then accountable for supporting that training
Mm.
ongoing within that company.
It is possible to add like mentorship, peer-to-peer training as well. But I also think it could be important with some sort of ownership for the employee. You take a course, you have ownership of your own learning experience and journey. So you can set some sort of goals. Maybe you would like to change one behavior this month. It is another behavior the month after that, and then you can have a progress and accountability and ownership of your own
Yeah.
learning journey and progress.
Yes. Yeah. Nothing works better than self-motivation,
Mm.
except, so there is something. I shouldn't say nothing works better.
Tell more,
Self-motivation is
tell
great,
more.
but we almost always do better when there is someone else helping us.
Yeah,
Going to the gym is easier when you go with someone.
that's true.
It might feel like a pain, like, oh, I have to go. Sarah's going to be at the gym again. Oh, I promised Ava I was going to meet her, and I can't quit. So I might not enjoy it at that moment, but I'm far more likely to go.
Mm.
And this is where what you've suggested couples with something that I add at the end of almost all my trainings. So as we wrap up the training session and plan the next steps, I have a make it stick section.
Mhm.
It's usually the
Mm.
last 15 minutes or so.
Yeah.
And in that, I get people to identify what is one specific area they want to or need to work on.
Mhm.
What is one very small but specific action they will take.
Mm.
And it's got to be small because otherwise it's overwhelming. And we want it to be
Mm.
achievable to get that first win. And
Mm.
then everybody pairs up to find an accountability partner.
That's awesome. Mhm.
And
Yep.
they write down three things. What is
Yeah.
that person's name? What is that person's phone number or email?
Mhm.
And what is the date at which that person is going to contact them and say, hey, did you do your action yet?
Mm.
And
Love it.
it goes both ways. And
Yeah.
that accountability,
Yeah.
it's the first step. Now,
Mm.
beyond that, maybe they won't do it. Maybe they will just do it one time and never do it again. But for a few people, they have that conversation and say, okay, what's your next action? And when will I check in on that? And they keep doing it. And
Mm.
those are the people that get the best value from the training they've received.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have also used a similar method. Yeah, I think we called it accountability partnership or success partner, and it was a long certification, and it was great to have to have a study buddy and meet
Yes.
on a regular basis, help each other, and see that we made the progress we need to do. So.
Yep. Oh, it makes such a difference. And it doesn't take much. It takes 3 minutes, maybe five if we
Mm.
make it like people moving around at the end of the session,
Mm.
but 3 to 5 minutes at the end of a training workshop.
Yeah.
And I can use 2 or 3 different methods to make it stick. Self-determined action, but focusing on one small thing, and then finding someone who's going to help reinforce it and picking a specific date they're going to call. None of these
Mm.
things are complicated, but
Lovely.
they greatly increase the chance of someone actually doing something. I think the stats are if we write something down, if I say I'm going to go to the gym on Thursday, if I write it down, I'm 3 times more likely to go. If I tell someone else, I'm 10 times more likely to go.
That's true. Yes.
So for 3 to 5 minutes at the end of a workshop, at the end of a training session,
Mm.
getting somebody 10 times more likely to learn and apply something to remember and apply something from their training, that's got to be worth a few minutes at
And
the
then
end.
And then we can manage the Ebbinghaus curve with a 90% loss of our memory within a week. So we
Yes.
need all these small tips and techniques to
Yeah.
go above expectations with our trainings.
Exactly, exactly.
Yes.
And you can go big. I mean, one of the methods in
Mm.
the book is about creating an AI-based tool that
Hmm.
consumes your training and spits out all stuff and makes it interactive.
Yeah.
If that's your thing, go
Mm.
nuts. Go do that.
Mm.
It can be
Yeah.
great. But if you don't have the time, money, expertise, interest, then
Yeah.
don't do that. Pick
No.
something else. The point is, do something. Don't just expect people will use what we've taught because human nature says they're not going to.
Mm. I have seen large organizations here in Europe the last month. They have like projects with AI. They train algorithms. It is part of the learning to learn more about AI, and yeah, how they can be better in learning and development with
Yeah.
competence mappings and map trainings and which sort of trainings that suit their staff and
Oh
employers.
yeah. Yeah.
So that is really interesting to see how a few companies experiment with AI in that way.
Oh yes. Yeah, I'm seeing it used in so many different ways from sort of personally within companies to speed up
Hmm.
efficiency. I use things I use it to improve some of my writing.
Hmm.
I always create first because I want to say the thing I want to say.
Mm.
My
Yeah.
grammar is not good. Um, and if anyone's against AI, then you
Yeah.
can't use Microsoft Word anymore because that has auto prompts that
Yeah.
are based on the same technology.
Yeah.
So we need the help. But one of the most interesting things I've seen recently is a skills assessment
Hmm.
where there's an assessment criteria and a rubric.
Mm.
The questions are created using AI or a large language model.
Hmm.
And someone starts the assessment by saying, I do this job, this is my job title, this is my industry, and there's a little description of their job.
Hmm.
And then the test, the questions are created and tailored to their job, their level, their
Hmm.
industry. So the questions aren't just generic
Mm.
communication questions or leadership or whatever team engagement. They are specific to that person's role.
Mm.
And it doesn't take an army of people behind the scenes handwriting each of these questions. It
Mm.
just does it on the fly for
Yeah.
10,000 different jobs.
Yeah.
It's a great use of a tool to make training and testing and assessing more
Absolutely.
relevant to the people so they're actually
Hmm.
more engaged in it.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. It's difficult to see all, though it is lots of opportunities, but I think it's difficult to see all of them. It is like a blind spot. It's still a blind spot.
Yes, the only thing that is certain is particularly in training, if anyone is ignoring AI,
Mm.
they're going to be overtaken.
Mm.
And even in-person workshops,
Yeah.
you can't ignore AI.
No.
Doesn't mean your workshops have to use it, but you need to be able to use it to do the pre-work,
Yeah.
to update some of your content, perhaps to be relevant to that organization, or at least be aware of how AI may impact the thing that you're teaching.
Mm.
Because there are very few things that we teach that won't be impacted by AI. And I put that out in a discussion in a panel fairly recently, and someone said, "What about fishing?" Yeah, fish tracking, fish stock management for trawlers out on the ocean absolutely will be using AI for modeling what fish patterns, where the stocks are going to be. And, and then someone said, "Well, what about fishing on the lake near my house?" And I didn't have to say anything. Another member of the audience piped up and said, I've got an app that, and then they went through and said what the app does that's based on. It's like even fishing on the lake near their house is touched by AI. And it's
It is everywhere.
yeah, yeah,
Mm.
it was something like they took a picture of the lake and in it analyzed where were the best shaded areas where the fish might be. And there was just, I'm not a fisherman, as you may be able to tell from my description there. But the people who were said, "Oh yeah, it's been used like this." So
Yeah.
we can't ignore it.
No.
We really can't.
We need to, yeah, follow the trend and learn as quickly as we can.
Yes, yes. We need
Yes.
training ourselves, training that sticks.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Do you think it is a yeah, a gap in knowledge of AI in organizations?
Oh, yes, yes. And I say that not because I'm some great AI whiz, but because of so I read some of the AI daily synopses, and it's a geeky interest area for me. And the pace of change is so fast, and the range of applications is so broad, it's not possible to stay up to date with it. Even the people who are either self-reported or described as being gurus in this area and known experts, even they say this stuff is so hard to stay on top of. Just almost keeping up with it is a full-time job. So everybody is missing out and working behind the scenes. And that's been true of almost all technology development over time. Think about when the internet came in.
Yeah.
It's a core part of most of our lives now, but there's still, what is it, half the world doesn't have access to it. So it's not for everybody. But when it came in, those who got in early really got ahead.
Yeah.
Those who got in late were just about catching up. The same is true for AI, but the pace is so much faster.
Yeah, absolutely. Is it something that, yeah, what has surprised you the most, like the last years or this year?
In the use of AI, or just in life in
In
general?
learning, communication, you're a communication expert, Chris, but in learning or communication.
One of the things, it actually relates to what we've just talked about. One of the things that surprises me the most is there's still a group of people who are actively resisting and completely denying that there's going to be any change at all. And that this is the way we've always done it. It will continue to work this way.
Yeah.
Particularly in school-based education.
Yeah.
And that is I feel that is an incredibly risky and naive and damaging. I mean, I'm saying some bold things, but it's risky, it's naive, and it's damaging. And it's damaging to future generations.
Yeah.
Because there's Western schools it's down to individual teachers for how they're going to incorporate some of these technologies. And there's understandably a reluctance to start flooding the classroom with all of these things. But if we look to China, Korea, Japan, AI is in classrooms helping the teachers. So there are cameras watching the students, which there's a separate discussion about whether that's right or wrong. But what the teacher gets is they get a notification when a student has been distracted from the task that they're doing for a certain amount of time. So there's analysis of body language, of engagement, where's people looking, sort of eye movement patterns. And it's not done in a punitive way to punish. The teacher then knows this person may need some help. Rather than relying on the teacher to be constantly watching what's going on, the teacher can spend more time going to the person who needs help, who may not have been brave enough to raise their hand. And that, in that style of teaching, can be really helpful. That's a way to use the tool. I think as at the risk of really going on a long answer, there's one more example.
No worries.
My background is engineering.
Yeah.
And so I did a lot of maths and science and those sorts of things. And when I was at school, scientific calculators came in and became allowed in exams. And I remember having conversations with my father and with some of the teachers where my father would wax lyrical about in my day, we had to use trigonometry tables and a slide rule. And I would roll my eyes and go, yes, and an abacus. And you were still, the wheel was just invented.
Mhm.
And because for us, of course, you'd use the tool that was available. Well, now, like that change from no calculator or just a basic number calculator to a scientific calculator was a huge advantage for us that previous generations didn't like or understand or feel was appropriate. Skip forward now, everyone in their classroom has a tablet that's powerful enough to send spacecraft to the moon. So, and we go, well, that's far too much. And I caught myself having this conversation going, oh gosh, they shouldn't have access to this in my day. And then I realized I'd become my father.
Yeah.
I understood what he was saying and where he was coming from. But the teachers, we need to, and parents and students, stuff moves on. And we need to just accept that the tools that are available are the things we need to adapt to and teach how to use them and adapt the learning styles to make the best advantage of them, but also make us not completely reliant on them.
Thank you. Is it, now I'm curious, is it focus on too much like knowledge instead of learning? Because I connect learning, real learning that you try, test, experiment, you receive knowledge, but then you make practice of it to make it like real learning. So is it too much knowledge, or how can you see a balance there?
Oh, we're going deep now. We're now getting into
Yeah.
learning and teaching styles. Ooh.
Yeah.
So where could we take this?
I think in school it is important with knowledge, but it is so much focus on knowledge and not so much real learning, as I mentioned.
And applying it, and yes, learning by rote. And this came in the sort of 1800s when industrialists, sort of the history of how the current school system came about. Go back 300 years, it was very elitist, and it was about preparing people to, in the upper echelons of society, to become leaders and landowners, etc. In the 1800s, the American school system, the British school systems were set up initially by people who ran big factories, providing some kind of care for the children while the parents were at work, but also, and this is in the early manifests for education, it was to indoctrinate and contain the thinking of common people so that they would stay in their position. And I'm not going to get into a big thing about classist societies. This is available to go and find and read in the writings of the industrialists who set up early rote education styles. And it was designed to ensure a certain way of thinking and get certain supports in life. And the thing is that was coupled with something that really helped those people. Reading, writing, knowing our numbers are very valuable things. We did raise the education level across Western society. And the same in Eastern society, but they did a slightly different schooling mechanism. So learning by rote and knowledge has helped people. For sure, we don't all work in fields with hand tools anymore. We've got a far more advanced society.
Yeah.
But things change. And learning facts doesn't help you apply them. So the application is always better. And then we get into, well, do you have a Montessori style where it's self-directed learning versus a particular curriculum? And then how do you scale this to work for millions of people rather than just a handful in specialist schools? And I think that debate will rage for many, many years to come as to what is the best style. For me, application.
Yeah.
Give me the knowledge, help me understand it, and then point me to go and use it. And that's the way that I personally learn best. But humans are varied. So it's always going to be different things that work for different people.
Absolutely. And I think in some projects, in some teams, in organizations, like an innovation team or other sort of teams, then it is, learn by practice. You do some sort of experiments and innovate that way. So
Yeah.
then you go from knowledge to practice to
Yes.
learning, and you have failures and learn from failures
Yeah.
and
And I
continue
think
that way.
life tells us that that's important. You wouldn't go and see a doctor who said, I've studied for 7 years, but this is my first time drawing blood.
Mhm.
Oh, didn't you practice that during your learning?
Yeah.
And even topics like theoretical physics,
Yeah.
it has the word theory in the title, but
Hmm.
they still have to use it. Now,
Hmm.
I have a friend who's a theoretical physicist
Hmm.
who debates that applied physics is where they go and use it.
Hmm.
But even in the theoretical side, they're still writing stuff down, testing it, applying, seeing how it works. It's
Yeah.
not just thinking about it, it's
Yeah.
using it and doing it. And
Yeah.
that's where we find out whether things work or not and where our limitations are.
Do you have a mistake you have learned a lot from?
Yes, which one?
Difficult. So
So
many, I guess. I
many.
have so many.
I have a 7-year-old, soon to be 8-year-old. I make mistakes every day, and
That's
she
good.
gleefully points them out.
I hope they are small because that's the best. Small mistakes.
Yeah, she still has all her fingers and toes, so we'll go with the mistakes haven't been too bad. But in work, a mistake. There's one I talked about publicly recently in a TEDx talk where I talked about a very simple misunderstanding that happened, and it was about 2006. I was working for an engineering company, and we were working on a big pitch, a big proposal that was worth a lot to the business. And a few days before the big meeting, my boss came up and said, "Hey, Chris, something's come up. I need you to move the meeting from Tuesday to Thursday."
Hmm.
And so off I went, and I rescheduled the meeting, and I sent an email to the client explaining something had happened. And about a minute later, my phone rang.
Hmm.
Pick it up, and it was my boss.
Yeah.
And in amongst the not safe for work language was a question. He said, "Why did you move the meeting?"
Mm.
It turns out he meant our one-to-one, and I was thinking about the client meeting. Two very, very different topics.
Absolutely.
And what I learned was I need to clarify, confirm, and don't make any assumptions at all.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
and that was a really important thing. And it marked the beginning, or it's certainly around that time where I began to become interested in how we improve our communication at work, which led to me
Mm.
writing the first minute, which is for those watching this is on the shelf
Yeah.
behind me.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
part of the first minute is about making sure the topic of the conversation is clear so we can avoid misunderstandings like that. So I
Yeah.
think that was a big mistake that cost a lot, but
Mm.
also taught me a lot at the same time.
Mm. Wonderful. Oh, I love to hear stories like this. We other, the audience and me, we can learn so much from others. Great. And då ska vi se. If you summarize the most important from our discussion today, Chris, what would you like to tell the audience?
The most important thing from our discussion today has been at the core of everything we've talked about. If you work in training, deliver training, hire people so that they can deliver training, you must pay attention to what happens after trainees leave the room. Make sure the training includes something to help support it over time after that initial training event.
Thank you. Very, very important message. Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
And do you have any tips on new guests for Edtech Tuesdays? Who
Oh,
would you like to listen to?
Yes. Now, if you haven't had her already, Sher Downing, she
Mm,
runs an edtech company and has her own edtech podcast.
mm,
And she and I have been, we've been connected and sort of on and off work together for a few years now, 3 or 4 years. And she's wonderful. I think your guests will learn a lot, and she's a great conversationalist as well. So
yeah,
Sher Downing, and I'll send you her
yeah,
name as well so that you get that.
perfect. Thanks a lot. And what's next for you? I think you are writing a book for the moment, but is it something that comes to your mind on what's next?
Yes, it's anyone who's written a book, it is all consuming, and this is my sixth book. So yes,
Oh,
it's called The
wow.
Meeting Sweet Spot, and it's a short, practical guide for how to run effective meetings. And it's designed to be a quick reference. I've had great feedback. You've been involved and given me some wonderful feedback as well. So
Yes,
um,
I have. It was
I,
lovely.
I say wonderful, but it was helpful. But that
Mm,
was the thing. The best feedback is where somebody says, "This bit isn't good.
mm.
Make this better." So thank you for that. Um, and I think it'll come out around April 2025. And it's a short, quick, practical book. That is what I teach, practical methods to make everyday communication just that little bit easier.
Mm, super. I'm really looking forward to hold your book in my hand and read it again with
Yes,
all
and you'll get
the
the
revisions.
full color version that will come your way.
Perfect. Thank you, Chris. Yes, and how can the audience reach out to you?
Well, my main social hangout is on LinkedIn. Look up Chris Fenning and you'll find me. And of course, if you want to get in touch or see the kind of things that I offer, or get a bunch of free training content for communications and making your own training stick, check out my website, which is chrisfenning.com.
Thanks a lot. Awesome. Thanks for today. Really nice to discuss to you during this conversation.
Oh, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Du har lyssnat på Edtech Tuesdays, en intervjupodd producerad av Snabbfoting. Vi är ledare inom kontinuerligt lärande och digitala plattformar. Besök oss på snabbfoting.se för att läsa mer om framtidens lärande.